Hello, I'm Tim and I have too many books. I read a book recently by Fanny Kemble. I know, a booktuber reading a book. Who'd have thunk it? Anyway, Fanny Kemble was an actress and a writer. She was born in 1809 into the theatrical Kemble family. Possibly the best known member of the Kemble family was Fanny Kemble's aunt Sarah Siddons, who was a long-time collaborator with the great David Garrick in the 18th century. Fanny Kemble began acting at a young age and wowed the theatrical community at the age of 19 with her performance as Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. She toured to America with her father in 1832. There she met and later married Pierce Mies Butler, grandson of Pierce Butler, one of America's founding fathers. After they married in 1835, they lived mainly in Philadelphia, although in the winter of 1838 through 1839, they went to live on Pierce Mies plantations on the Darien coast of Georgia. These were, of course, slave plantations, and Fanny Kemble came face to face with slavery for the first time. She recorded many of her experiences in letters written to a friend. Although she shared many of the racial attitudes of people of her time, she was shocked by the realities of slavery. She also shocked many of her neighbours in Georgia by being a lot more friendly and more helpful to the slaves than was expected of a Southern belle at the time. It was almost inevitable that Fanny Kemble's bad experience of slavery led to friction within her marriage. And by 1845, Fanny Kemble had left her husband and returned to England. Of course, it wasn't just the whole matter of slavery. Her husband was also unfaithful to her. It wasn't until 1849 that they finally got a divorce, and it meant that Fanny Kemble had to give up her two daughters, and she didn't see them again until they were over 21. Pierce Mies Butler didn't do all that well after divorcing Fanny Kemble. He lived an extremely dissolute life, and by 1859 he'd pretty much run out of money. In order to raise funds, he sold many of his slaves. It is called the Great Slave Auction in Georgia. He put about 429 slaves up for sale and netted himself about $10 million in today's money. During the American Civil War in 1863, Fanny Kemble compiled her experiences of living on that Georgia plantation back in the 1830s into a book. It had the somewhat unwieldy title of A Journal of a Residence on a Georgia Plantation, 1838 to 1839. It is in many ways a savage indictment of the way that slavery worked, and Fanny Kemble very clearly nailed her colours to the mast in support of both abolition and the northern states against the south. Of her two daughters, her elder daughter Sarah married a physician and set up life in Philadelphia. Fanny Kemble's other daughter Frances stayed with her father, Pierce Mies Butler, and after the war helped him try to run his Georgia plantations without slaves. Pierce Mies Butler died in 1867, leaving his daughter to struggle on trying to make a going concern of the plantations. In 1871, Frances Butler married an English-born minister and tried to struggle on with making the plantations a going concern. The plantation eventually failed, and in 1877, Frances Butler Leigh, as she now was, returned to England with her husband and settled near to her mother, Fanny Kemble. In 1883, Frances Butler Leigh published her own account of living and working on a Georgia plantation. It was called 10 Years on a Georgia Plantation Since the War. By all accounts, this book makes out that it was much better when they had slaves to boss around, and has a very strong dose of the just cause mythology. What is odd about the publication of this book is that there is no record of Fanny Kemble objecting strongly to this book. Fanny Kemble and her daughter seem to have kept up a fairly regular correspondence, and there doesn't seem to have been any rift between them. In her biography of Fanny Kemble, the writer Catherine Clinton intimates that perhaps Fanny Kemble had softened some of her views on slavery and on abolition, and was perhaps a little bit more accepting of what her daughter had written. But we need to return to Fanny Kemble's other daughter, Sarah Wister, as she now was. In 1860, Sarah Wister gave birth to a son. His name was Owen, much like his father. And this Owen Wister had a variety of careers and interests. He studied for 2 years in Paris at a conservatoire for music and wrote 6 operas which were never performed. Giving up on music, he studied for law at the Harvard Law School, joined a legal practice, but it never really stuck. In 1885 he made a breakthrough as a writer, writing a book called The New Swiss Family Robinson, which was a satire of the 1812 original. Owen Wister suffered from various ailments, and he headed out west in the hope that the large skies and clearer air would help with his maladies. He collected tales from people he met out on the frontier and published them as fictionalised biographical stories in various publications. And in 1902 he published The Virginian, arguably the first ever Western novel, certainly one of the first novels to have a cowboy as a hero. Now, at the time of recording, we are in June, and June for some booktubers means June on the Range, a celebration of the Western novel. And this year the set book is The Virginian by Owen Wister. So now you know a little bit, not just about Owen Wister, the writer of The Virginian, but about his aunt, Frances Butler, and about his grandmother, Fanny Kemble, actress, abolitionist, and grandmother of the Western, maybe?